Okay, here we go. What we'll be doing is working with 45, 45, 90 triangles and 30, 60, 90 triangles. Okay? So, those are two special types of right triangles. Now, you have to know where the hypotenuse is of each and which ones are legs. All right. So, in a 45, 45, 90, if our legs are x and x, then our hypotenuse is x squared root of 2. Why would if one leg is x, would the other one have to be x if it's a 45, 45, 90? What did we learn first semester about if we have two angles that are congruent? What type of a triangle is it? Not just a right triangle, it's an isosceles triangle. So if we have a 45, 45, 90 triangle, that makes it an isosceles triangle, which makes the two legs congruent to each other. Now, if we use the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, x squared plus x squared is 2x squared. If we take the square root of 2x squared, we get x square root of 2. Okay? So, if this side is 4, what's the upper leg going to be? 4. And then your hypotenuse is just 4 times the square root of 2. That's the pattern. As long as you learn the pattern, you'll be good. So, what's x and what's y here? X is 8. Y is 8 square root of 2. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. What is y in this one? Square root of 10. Okay? So, just because x comes before in the alphabet doesn't mean you have to find x first when you're doing these. Sometimes it's easiest to find y first, then find x. Okay? So y is the square root of 10. What is x? Square root of 10 times the square root of 2 is the square root of 20. Now, can the square root of 20 be broken down? Yeah. Into the square root of what? Square root of what? 4 and 5. So it's 2 square root of 5. So this side is 2 square root of 5. Okay? All right. If we have the hypotenuse given to us, if you go to a side, you don't multiply, you divide by the square root of 2. So if you have the hypotenuse, to get to a side, you divide. To get to a side, what do? Divide. So if we're at the square root of 14, to get to the side, we divide by what? Square root of 2. What's the square root of 14 divided by the square root of 2? Square root of 7.
Wait, actually?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it was a great guess. Square root of 14 divided by square root of 2 is square root of 7. What if we have 10 here? We take 10 divided by the square root of 2. Now, can I leave my answer with a square root in the denominator? No. So how do I get rid of the square root of 2 on the denominator? I have to multiply by itself. So I multiply the numerator times it and the denominator times it. So we get 10 square root of 2 over 2. And then 10 over 2 is what? What's 10 divided by 2? 5. So it's 5 square root of 2. So this side's 5 square root of 2, and this side's 5 square root of 2. Okay? So when you go from the hypotenuse to the side, you divide. All right. Here's another one. We have the hypotenuse. When you go from the hypotenuse to the side, what do? Divide by what? Square root of 2. Can we leave square root of 2 on the bottom? No. So you have to multiply top and bottom by square root of 2. So we get 7 square root of 2 over 2. And so that's what it is. We're just stuck at 7 square root of 2 over 2 because it doesn't break down. So you might have a problem or two that looks like that. Okay? So remember, in a 45, 45, 90, when one side is x, the other side is x, and then you multiply to get to the hypotenuse. If you're given the hypotenuse, you divide by the square root of 2 to get to the two sides. Okay, that's a 45, 45, 90. In a 30, 60, 90, you always find the short leg first. And from the short leg, it leads us to the other two legs. So, if the short leg is x, the long leg is x times the square root of 3, not the square root of 2, but the square root of 3. And the hypotenuse is 2x, twice as long as the short leg. So you take the short leg times 2 to get to the hypotenuse. So if the short leg is 4, what's the long leg? Multiply by square root of 3. And then if the short leg is 4, what's the hypotenuse? Multiply by 2 to get 8. If we're given the hypotenuse right at the start, how do we get to the short leg? Divide by 2. So the short leg's 5. Now how do we get to the long leg? Multiply the short leg times the square root of 3. That's why we find the short leg first, so then we can get to the other side. If 7 is the hypotenuse, what's half of 7? 3.5. But we're going to write it as 7 over 2. Okay? When we divide by 2, just write it as 7 divided by 2, or 7 over 2. Now, how do we get from the short leg to the long leg? We multiply by square root of 3. So we're going to write it like that. 7 square root of 3 over 2. Check. Nope. I want it as improper fractions. Do not put it as 3.5 square root of 3. Don't use mixed decimals and radicals. Okay? Leave them as improper fractions. Okay, what if we know the long leg is 5 square root of 3? How do I get to the short leg? Divide by the square root of 3. Because if we multiply to get to the long leg by square root of 3, then to get back to the short side, we divide by the square root of 3. So the short leg is 5. How long is the hypotenuse? 10. Now, if the short leg is 9, the long leg is 9, there's no square root of 3 involved. We have to divide by the square root of 3 to get to the short leg, right? So, can I leave it like that? No. So I have to multiply top and bottom by square root of 3. So it's 9 square root of 3 over 3. What's 9 divided by 3? So it's 3 square root of 3. Once I get the short leg, it's easy to find the hypotenuse because all you have to do is multiply by 2. So it's 6 square root of 3. What if our hypotenuse is 6 square root of 2, something crazy like that? What do you find first? Short leg. You always find the short leg first in 30, 60, 90. So you divide by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So we're at 3 square root of 2. And then how do I get to the long leg? You multiply by square root of 3. So we end up with 3 square root of 6. Because square root of 2 times square root of 3 is square root of 6. Okay?